A fierce storm lashes a forgotten village where whispered laws once promised protection, but now only shadows remain. Can fragile hope survive beneath the weight of broken kings and silent oaths? A cold mist clings like a shroud to the jagged stones of a courthouse long abandoned, where the flicker of a lone candle struggles to hold back shadows pooling beneath heavy vaulted arches. The air is thick with the scent of beeswax and damp leather, a ghostly perfume weaving through time-worn robes and trembling hands. Somewhere, far beyond these walls, a bell tolls slow, distant, threading through the chill morning air like a mournful breath. It is a sound that speaks of endings and beginnings, of promises once made and now fraying at the edges, like the brittle parchment resting beneath the stern gaze of carved saints. Their stone eyes seem to judge not only the men who once sought justice here, but the weight of the laws themselves, the fragile, trembling laws born from ambition and desperation. This place, once the heart of order, now exhales silence and dust, a tune for the words that were meant to bind kingdoms and hearts alike. Within this solemn chamber, the heavy robes of judges and scribes whisper softly, their voices a low chorus of loyalty, dissent, and betrayal, whispered prayers carried on the cold breath of dawn. The parchment lies faded, its edges ragged, a relic not of glory but of endurance of lives torn by the sharp edge of power, wielded like a sword. These lost laws flicker in memory like dying embers in a hearth long forgotten. They carry the weight of rulers who struck decrees with iron fists and peasants who clung to dreams of justice beneath skies darkened by war and famine. Each faded clause is a shard of a broken covenant, a fragile thread in a tapestry woven with fear, sacrifice, and silent suffering. It is here, beneath stone and shadows, that the story begins, not with banners unfurled or swords drawn, but with the fragile hope that law might bind kings as surely as it bound their subjects. The weight of these forgotten words presses like iron chains, binding, suffocating, yet offering a slender thread of hope in a world balanced precariously on the edge of ruin. Voices rise and fall, a tapestry of voices caught between obedience and rebellion. The echoes of those who lived and died beneath these laws seep, among them the whispered prayers of the forgotten, the starving mother, the weary soldier, the betrayed. Vassal each soul, a testament to promises made in desperation and broken in ambition. The parchment, so fragile in human hands, holds the invisible weight of kingdoms shifting beneath the surface, of empires trembling on the brink of collapse. Outside, the morning light struggles through the mist, casting faint bands of pale gold. Across the cold stone floor, the fragile glow touches the parchment's worn surface, as if coaxing life back into the faded ink. It is a quiet, almost sacred moment, a breath held between despair and stubborn hope. And as the candle flickers low, the echoes of these lost laws stir once more, whispering of destinies shaped not by conquest, but by the slow, relentless turning of power and justice. This is the realm where law is both sword and shield, where trust is a fragile thread stretched thin by fear and ambition. The forgotten courthouse holds the silence of countless untold stories, the struggles of those who sought to tame the ruthless hunger of kings with nothing but fragile promises and trembling hands. And though the parchment may crumble, its spirit endures, a quiet flame flickering against the darkness, a fragile promise that the fate of kingdoms is forever bound to the fragile power of law. As the light fades and shadows deepen, the chapter closes not with certainty, but with a question hanging like smoke in the cold air. Can these lost laws, fragile as parchment and human will, ever rise again to bind the hearts of men? Or will they remain whispers in the dark echoes of a time when kingdoms were forged and doomed alike beneath the weight of fragile promises? The story presses forward, carried on the breath of those who still believe that even in ruin, law may yet be a beaconous, slender thread weaving past to future, binding king and commoner, justice and survival in a dance as old as kingdoms themselves. The low murmur of rain falls softly against the thatched roofs, each drop a cold kiss upon the worn timbers that lean warily into the twilight's gray embrace. The village breathes under a heavy cloak of mist and shadow, wrapped in the scent of damp earth and the faint smoke curling from a crooked chimney, a fragile signal of life stubbornly flickering amid encroaching despair. Outside, the narrow lanes glisten with mud, and rotting carts sag under the weight of broken wheels, while weary livestock shiver beneath the chill that seeps into bone and marrow. Barefoot children move like ghosts through the fog, their steps silent, their eyes hollow with hunger and the weight of whispered story stales of laws once carved in stone, now buried beneath layers of neglect and mistrust. Inside a dim chamber, faint candlelight struggles against the gathering dark, casting long shadows that twist and writhe across cold stone walls. There, a scribe leans over fragile parchment, his ink-stained fingers trembling as they trace letters forged in secrecy and fear. Each careful stroke is more than script. It is a prayer against the unraveling of order, a desperate invocation to hold together a world fraying at the edges. The air is thick with the scent of beeswax and aged vellum, mingling with the damp chill that creeps beneath the door, a reminder that the outside world offers no mercy, only relentless hardship. This village is a fragile thread, a living testament to the tenuous grip of power, where survival depends not on armies or swords, but on invisible laws. Stretched thin by cruelty and neglect, the villagers move like shadows themselves, silent watchers, tethered to a hope as fragile as the candle flame. Their faces are maps of hardship-furrowed brows, cracked lips, eyes that hold the flicker of stubborn defiance beneath exhaustion. Mothers clutch threadbare cloaks around shivering children. Farmers nurse aching backs bent beneath invisible burdens, and elders murmur prayers that slip into the damp night air like forgotten echoes. The lost decrees that once promised protection and justice have become ghost stories whispered beside hearths, their authority drowned in the tolling bells of hardship and the cold silence of broken trust. Outside, the wind carries the faintest murmur of a bell tolling across mist-shrouded fields, a sound both mournful and relentless. It marks time in a place where days bleed into nights without distinction, where the sun's warmth seems a distant memory swallowed by gathering clouds. Within these crumbling walls, shadows grow long and deep, mirroring the fading summer and the slow decay of hope. Yet, beneath this quiet despair, a fragile resilience endures, whispered in every sigh, every trembling breath drawn against the chill, every faded letter etched upon parchment. The scribe's weary breath flutters over the candle flame, sending flickering shadows, dancing like restless spirits across the walls, ghosts of promises made and broken, of justice once declared and now forgotten. Each mark on the parchment is a silent vow, a thread in the delicate fabric binding past to future, king to commoner, law to life. And as the night deepens and stars hide behind veils of cloud, the village exhales a lament, a song of loss, for laws vanished beneath mud and mistrust, for lives shattered by silence and neglect, and for kingdoms holding their fragile fate in trembling hands. This quiet lament is not a surrender, but a heartbeat, faint yet unyielding. It speaks of a world where power is measured not in conquest, but in survival, where the unseen chains of law bind hearts and hands in a dance of hope and despair. The village listens silent, watchful, waiting for justice to descend like rain upon the parched earth, to awaken the forgotten laws and rekindle the fragile promise that once shaped kingdoms and lives alike. The night holds its breath, the candle flickers once more, and in that fragile glow lies the whispered question that will carry the story onward. Can the lost laws rise again from the shadows, or will this fragile hope be swallowed forever by darkness? A sharp winter wind tears mercilessly through the skeletal remains of a battlefield, where shattered armor and broken weapons lie half-buried beneath frost-hardened earth, the cold biting deep into metal and bone alike. The bitter scent of blood lingers in the air, mingling with the acrid smoke rising from distant fires, while overhead the cry of ravens circles like an omen, their black wings cutting through the gray sky above a land scarred not just by war, but by betrayal. Amidst the frozen carnage, a torn banner flutters weakly against the cruel gusts, a silent witness to a treaty hastily signed and swiftly forgotten, its colors faded and its fabric torn by the relentless tread of men who chose power over peace. The laws meant to bind enemies together now lie trampled beneath the feet of those who saw only advantage in chaos, their fragile ink washed away by the blood spilled in cold defiance. In this icy silence, the weight of broken promises settles, like a shroud over the lifeless ranks of men who once dreamed of glory but found only ruin and despair. Beneath the winter's unforgiving gaze, dot in the shadow of the fallen, beneath a sky bruised with heavy clouds, a lone monk kneels beside a faded scroll half buried in the frost, his hands trembling as they clutch the fragile parchment like a lifeline. The curling smoke of a dying candle wraps around him like a shroud, merging faith and grief into a silent prayer for redemption that seems swallowed by the vast emptiness. His breath rises in fragile clouds, mingling with the cold air as he traces the faded letters, the lost laws once inscribed to bring order and justice, now fragile remnants of hope crumbled beneath the relentless tide of ambition and greed. This scene is frozen in time, a quiet moment etched between the thunder of battle and the stillness of aftermath, a place where faith confronts failure and the weight of choices made in darkness presses heavy on the soul. The monk's vigil is more than mourning. It is a reckoning born from the ashes of shattered kingdoms, where lawlessness did not come with the clash of swords alone, but with the silent erosion of trust and the slow decay of humanity. These laws, once wielded like shields, became nothing more than brittle paper crushed beneath boots, hungry for dominion. The cold earth holds their memory, a testament to what is lost when power blinds and mercy dies. As the weak dawn seeps through clouded skies, its pale light casts long shadows across the broken ground, illuminating the fragile thread that still binds the fate of the living to the sacrifices of the fallen. The monk rises slowly, the scroll pressed to his chest, and steps forward into a world poised on the knife's edge between despair and hope. A world where the true cost of lawlessness will not be measured in victories claimed by force, but in the broken souls left behind to carry the weight of silence and regret. This frozen field, littered with the scars of ambition and betrayal, speaks in hushed tones of the fragile balance between order and chaos, a balance once hoped to be maintained by laws whose ink has faded into oblivion. The wind carries the faint echo of voices, long silent soldiers, kings, peasants, soul-bound in a tapestry of suffering and sacrifice, woven with threads of trust shattered beneath iron fists. And in the stillness that follows, beneath the gathering gloom, a question lingers like a whispered prayer. Can the laws that once sought to tame the hunger for power rise again from the ashes of ruin? Or will the cold silence of this battlefield become the eternal grave of justice? As the monk's figure fades into the mist, the story moves onward, drawn deeper into the shadows, where broken promises wait to be confronted, and where the fragile hope of redemption still flickers like a dying flame struggling against the winter's endless night. Heavy fog coils like restless spirits through the narrow streets of a stone fortress city, where lanterns sputter weakly against the damp, cold air, and the sound of distant footsteps fades like a breath held too long beneath arched gateways, carved from ancient granite and behind weathered wooden doors swollen with rain. Men and women hold their breath, caught in a fragile dance between law and fear. The lost decrees, once proud symbols of justice and order, have withered into shadows, whispered only in secret gatherings where trust is scarce and betrayal lingers like a poison in the silence. Velvet robes brush against cold stone floors as masked figures exchange silent nods in dim corridors, each carrying the weight of fragile alliances bound by oath and fear. The air tastes faintly of cold iron and burnt tallow, a harsh reminder that power is often secured not by sword or shield, but through darkness, silence, and the quiet tightening of unseen chains. Inside a chamber, heavy with smoke and flickering candlelight, a council gathers around a worn oak table, scarred by years of deliberation and conflict, their faces gaunt and lined with sacrifice, flicker with shadows as the candle's flame dances uncertainly in the thick air. Between them lies a fragile parchment, its edges yellowed and curled, a relic heavy with the ghosts of promises broken and oaths left unfulfilled. Hands tremble subtly as the candlelight quivers, casting painterly shadows that seem to breathe with the tension woven tight around this moment. Here, loyalty is a thread stretched taut, bending beneath the weight of suspicion and hope alike. Law becomes both sword and shield, wielded carefully to protect and to wound, to bind kingdoms and to unravel them beneath the watchful eyes of history. The council's voices are hushed but charged, words spoken with measured caution yet burning beneath the surface with the fury of desperate ambition. These walls have heard whispered plots and silent prayers alike, each breath a gamble between survival and doom. The fog presses ever closer to the stone battlements outside, a cold and patient witness to the fragile balance held within. Here, the fate of kingdoms does not hinge on clashing armies or banners unfurled, but on the weight of whispered words and secret glances in the flickering light. The fragile parchment is more than ink, and vellum is the pulse of power itself. Fragile yet fierce, a slender thread woven through the tapestry of loyalty, betrayal, and the unyielding hunger for control in this silent chamber, where history hangs thick like smoke. The question lingers like a shadow cast long and dark. Can fragile law endure the hunger for power, or will it shatter beneath the pressure of ambition's relentless tide? The council's eyes meet in unspoken understanding, knowing the answer is a journey yet to be traveled. Outside, the fog thickens, swallowing the city whole as night deepens, and the story moves onward into the silent halls where trust is currency, betrayal is always near, and the delicate dance between justice and ruin unfolds beneath the ever-watchful gaze of time. The muted glow of dawn filters gently through stained glass, scattering fractured shards of color across worn flagstones in a cathedral steeped in silence and memory. The air is thick with the slow curl of incense smoke, rising like whispered prayers toward vaulted ceilings that have witnessed centuries of devotion and despair. A faint murmur threads through this sacred hush, the steady chant of monks reciting ancient hymns, voices weaving together faith and history in a fragile melody that clings to the stones like a sacred vow. Amid this hallowed quiet, a fragile manuscript rests carefully upon a wooden lectern, its edges frayed and tattered, yet alive with the hopes and fears of generations long past. The lost laws that shaped kingdoms are not carved here in cold stone or iron decree, but breathed into life through ritual and whispered faith beneath stained glass windows. As delicate and enduring as the light itself, a young novice kneels in humble stillness, fingers wrapped tightly around a rosary worn smooth by the countless hands of those who came before her. Her breath steady and calm despite the chill that seeps through thick stone walls, rises in soft clouds before fading into the candlelit shadows. Outside these heavy oak doors, the world waits its relentless churn of politics, war, and ambition, pressing close, yet here in this sanctuary time seems to hold its breath. The manuscript's words are more than ink on parchment, weaving together the tensions of faith and law, duty and mercy, hope and sacrifice. Each syllable carries the weight of promises made and broken, of kingdoms bound by fragile agreements and the unyielding thirst for redemption. The novice's devotion, quiet and resolute, becomes a fragile beacon in the storm, a single light flickering against the encroaching darkness of power struggles and betrayal. Around her, the ancient stones absorb the sacred tension. Here, beneath the watchful eyes of saints carved in stone and glass, the battle for the soul of kingdoms unfolds, not on bloodied fields, but within whispered rites and trembling hands. The manuscript holds the possibility of grace amid ruin, a slender thread that might yet weave hope where ambition threatens to unravel all. As the morning light strengthens, spilling through the stained glass with growing warmth, the novice's steady presence becomes a quiet testament to resilience. Beyond these walls, the tempest of power churns ever onward. But here, in this sacred place, the lost laws find voice, again delicate, enduring, and eternal. The fragile manuscript rests once more beneath the vaulted sky, a silent guardian of hope poised against the weight of broken promises and the uncertain dawn of a kingdom's fate. The distant rumble of thunder rolls low and relentless over cragged hills, rain lashing the thatched roofs of a remote village, cloaking it in cold and shadow. Fires gutter weakly in stone hearths, their flickering light casting restless shapes upon faces carved by years of toil and worry. In a dim corner, a mother bends over her child, wrapping threadbare cloth around fragile limbs, her hands trembling not just from cold, but from a fierce determination to protect the fragile hope nestled within. Outside figures, cloaked in heavy cloaks, move silently through mist-shrouded streets, their footsteps swallowed by the soaked earth beneath a secretive procession of messengers, bearing decrees forged far from these humble homes, words written in fading ink meant to bind king and serf alike in a fragile covenant. A tenuous thread stretched thin between survival and despair. The air carries the heavy scent of wet earth mingled with burning peat, the smoke of distant castle watchfires threading through the storm. Each whispered oath passes like a ghost across the villager, fragile shield held up against the ravages of hunger, war, and betrayal. These lost laws, often broken, still linger in the memory of those who live beneath their shadow, binding them in quiet resistance. The villagers breathe in the weight of promises once forged in halls of power, now softened by rain and time, softened yet never fully erased. The covenant, fragile as spun silk, is a lifeline, a whispered hope that law might still protect those who have been forgotten by power's harsh hand. Within the storm's relentless pulse, the mother's lullaby rises like a fragile prayer, its soft melody weaving threads between past and future. Her voice, roughened by fatigue but unwavering, becomes a beacon of defiance, promise that even the lost laws, buried beneath the weight of broken kings and forgotten battles, might one day shield the innocent. The song lingers in the damp night air, a testament to resilience amid darkness. As shadows stretch long and the storm deepens, the village holds fast to this slender hope, a fragile flame burning quietly against the gathering tempest. In the silence between raindrops, the question lingers: will the forgotten covenants ever rise again to protect those who live in their shadow, or will the night swallow all that remains of their fragile promise?